Hello, today we're talking about the origins and spread of Islam. Our essential question for today is, how did Islam originate and spread in Muhammad's time and beyond? And Muhammad is the prophet to God, and he is a major figure in Islam. Our goal should be that we are able to analyze the origins of Islam and the life and teachings of Muhammad, including Islamic teachings about Judaism and Christianity, because there is a connection. Talk about Muhammad, we need to talk about Arabia in the 6th century. So when someone says the Arabian Peninsula or refer to Arabia, they're referring to the same landmass, this peninsula right here. They might also be talking about parts of Africa there and parts of Asia there, but really we're talking about the landmass in the middle. This was Muhammad's birthplace. He was born in Mecca, which is roughly here, which is a rocky valley in western Arabia. It didn't have much agriculture and it relied on trade. It was actually a popular route for caravans, so merchants who would trade up and down the coast, and they'd also link up with part of the Silk Road, or they'd take kind of a water route around this area. Muhammad was born in 570 CE, and religious teachings of Islam teach that he lived an ordinary life as part of the Hashim clan, which was part of the leading tribe in Mecca. He lost his mother and father at an early age, and he was eventually raised by his grandfather, who was a leading member of the clan. You could see a historical image of Mecca. And you have the religious center that's kind of walled off from the rest of the city, and then we see kind of the living spaces for everyone who's living in the town. Once Muhammad's grandfather was older, he eventually died, and by the time that Muhammad was 12, he was taken in by his uncle Abu Talib. He learned how to become a merchant from his uncle, and eventually he became a well-known merchant of the time, especially because of his honesty. People called him Al-Amin, which meant the trustworthy. So he eventually worked for, then married a widow named Khadija. They had several children, including Fatima, who had children of her own, who continued the line of Muhammad, which becomes important later on in history. You can see this image of a camel caravan. This is actually happening on the eastern side of the Arabian Peninsula, but this is what a caravan might look like at the time of merchants trading around this region. As I said before, Muhammad is a pretty normal person for the time, and he's interested in two main things: being a good trader and spirituality. And in 610 CE, on a spiritual retreat into the mountains to pray, he receives this call to become a prophet, a messenger to Allah, an Islamic word for God. He tells of being visited by the angel Gabriel, who brings revelations or teachings from God directly to his ear. This is the actual cave that is said to be the site where Muhammad hears these messages from angel Gabriel. Islam is monotheist, meaning that Muslims believe in a single God. Muhammad actually teaches that this God that is being translated through the angel Gabriel is the same God told from other prophets like Abraham, Moses, and Jesus from Judaism and Christianity. So Muslim tradition teaches that Muhammad continues receiving these messages from God through Gabriel for about 20 years. He initially only tells his family, but then a small group of followers developed, and they're called Muslims, those who surrender to God. Through Muhammad, though he couldn't read or write himself, his followers memorize and collect his messages and write them in the Quran, the holy book of Islam. And this is a historical example that you see here. Muhammad begins preaching in Mecca around 613 CE. His teachings are rejected at first by many, and actual powerful clans start a boycott against the Hashim clan, so they won't do business with his family. And this creates a lot of conflict for Muhammad. Also during this time, his wife and his uncle die. So the two people that are closest to him pass away. And then he has this miraculous night journey. So the night journey is where he travels from Mecca to Jerusalem, a very important site for many world religions, including Islam. You can see the Dome of the Rock, which is an amazing Muslim mosque. And during this night journey, he travels that long distance in the night, riding this miraculous kind of horse-like animal, and he actually talks to the Prophet and talks to God. Muhammad moves to Yathrib for protection in the year 622 CE. So a group of Arabs, an Arab clan, takes him in, and these are people who believe in his teachings. They eventually rename the city Medina, which is the city of the Prophet. And this image right here is called the Prophet's Mosque. It's a large-scale mosque in Saudi Arabia that shows the importance of Muhammad in this part of the world and how revered he is, just by the scale. This movement in 622 is called the Hijra, and it marks the beginning of the Muslim calendar. So again, it just marks how important this movement is for Muslims and Islam. This is a picture of Medina. I know it's not great quality, but as Medina grows, the city of the Prophet, Mecca becomes threatened. And in 624, they start a war with Medina. By around 630, there is a truce, but that truce is broken by the Meccans, and Muhammad actually marches on Mecca, and essentially Mecca gives up to Medina, and the war ends. Now we have Mecca and Medina united under Muslim kind of rule and power, and Muhammad actually passes away at this time. 2 years after the end of the war, he leads his final pilgrimage into Mecca. He gives his final sermon upon his return to Medina, and this is kind of a transition time for Muslims in this area.